Croeso to Wrexham News. I'm Carrie Harper.
And I'm Marc Jones.
And today we're talking to Sioned Williams. Charlotte, do you want to tell us what your role is, what spokesperson are you for Plaid Cymru?
Yes, well, I'm a member of the Senedd for South Wales West, but I'm also spokesperson for social justice and early years for Plaid Cymru.
So the big headline policy that everybody's talking about is the new childcare policy. Can you talk us through how it differs from what we have now?
Well, currently we've got lots of different bits of childcare provision in Wales that are funded by the government, and you have to apply for each one. They're all different. They all kick in different times of your child's life. Some of them depend on your postcode, and none of them go below 2 years old. So it's far too complicated as regards applications, and we know that a lot of people don't take up that support because it's just too complicated and complex to understand, and there's firm evidence around that, and also obviously it's not really meeting the needs of people because, you know, if you've had a baby and then you've been on maternity leave or parental leave and then you need to go back to work, or you want to go part-time but perhaps, you know, you'll still need childcare provision, nothing happens until your child is 2, possibly 3, depending on where you live. So by that time, you've had to make decisions. And what we're seeing in the child poverty figures is that over 50% of families who are living in poverty have children 0 to 4. So obviously, you can't increase your income, or you may have had to drop out of the labour market if you've got caring responsibilities such as childcare. So therefore, you know, it makes a lot of sense as regards what we want to do is simplify it, so have one offer, and that would kick in at 9 months old, which is when most people are thinking of going back to work after maternity or paternity parental leave. So that's why we've said we need to expand it down to 9 months old, and also it will be for 48 weeks a year, because most people get 4 or 5 weeks annual leave. So with 48 weeks of 20 hours a week funded provision for all children, so it's universal, hopefully that would meet a lot of need as regards people's childcare needs. And the reason why a lot of people don't take up childcare as well is because it's so expensive. So childcare costs in Wales are amongst the highest in the UK, and a lot of people pay more for childcare than they do for their mortgage or for their rent. So it's something that we absolutely need to solve, because it will also put money back in people's pockets, will help people to work, which will improve the economy and improve poverty levels. But crucially for me as well, it's about child development, because we know that children do well in childcare. Estonia, for instance, has the highest PISA results in Europe. They've got funded childcare, they've got an amazing childcare system, and there's research has shown there's a correlation between those two things.
So that link's established then? That's interesting.
Yes, achievement, a child's, we talk about the achievement gap currently, which goes hand in hand with poverty, and also their health considerations too. So children do better when they are in early year settings.
So we're saying it's the most generous childcare policy in the UK. It sounds quite similar to what England has. What's the difference then?
The main difference is going to be that it's going to be for 20 hours a week for 48 weeks a year. The current offer in England is 38 weeks a year. So you can imagine there's a big gap there. Okay. You know, if you think about 52 weeks in a year, you know, parents are going to have to try and fill that, and also it's fewer hours too. And the other thing that we've said we want to do, and we're going to have to do this to a degree in order to increase capacity as regards settings and as regards workforce, is to phase it in, because we want to learn. The way it was brought in England did have faults. And there's been a lot of coverage about that in the press. So we definitely need to catch up as regards funded provision, but we also want to make sure that we do this in the right way, learning some of the lessons from England.
That was going to be one of my questions. So my daughter, her little one is 6 months. She's looking to go back to work towards the end of the year. You mentioned capacity. Even looking this far ahead, she's been struggling to find childminders with placements available. So I mean, capacity is a huge issue, isn't it? How are we going to work with the sector to address this? Have we already spoken to the sector? You know, how are we going to tackle that problem?
Yes, we have already spoken to the sector, as you would imagine, trying to understand that this would be the best approach and the best offer that we could make because obviously, you know, the sector talk to their families, don't they? Yeah. So they know that people would like more provision but just can't afford it. They know also the pressure that their families are under economically, and they know also the difference they can make to children who come to them, the way they develop through that high quality early years care. So there's that sort of lived experience side, but also as regards capacity and workforce, we've said that we would absolutely, we know there are challenges around that, but we want to make sure that we work with them, and we will immediately work with them. Something that Fflint Wrecsam talked about in the 100 Days plan today, we'll immediately start work on that to understand what needs to be done in order to get that capacity in place as soon as possible.
Okay.
One of the big challenges, though, is going to be the cost of this, because it's a huge offer. Are you confident that we can afford this?
Yeah, well, we did significant modelling around this. You know, before we announced this policy, we commissioned London Economics to do some work to show how, you know, at what would different costs by us, if you want to put it like that. You know, how looking at also at things like take up and demand. So we modelled it fully, and we decided that we could afford the version which anti-poverty campaigners, early years settings and policy experts told us was the best offer. So we've absolutely gone for that. And in the first year, because it will be phased, it will be about 400 million at when we start to fully roll this out. But in the first year, it will cost around 60 million, so about 20 million capital and about 40 million to extend it. And we know we have that headroom in the current budget, and of course the following budget will be a Plaid Cymru budget, hopefully, if we get into government, and then of course we'll be setting our priorities in line with that. So yes, a big chunk of money, but this policy more than pays for itself. The statistics show the IPPR, for instance, has done work on this, showing that the return to the economy is huge. It's something like £7.9 billion back to the exchequer in taxes, so that obviously shows economic activity. And in Wales that would be about 335 million. So that money going back, you know, it shows the prosperity it could create. And we know that it would absolutely, it would be worth about £32,000 over the child's provision then to families.
That's huge to families.
It's huge, isn't it? And so that would be money back in people's pockets.
And so is this about cost of living? Is this about improving children's experiences? Is this about what's the driving force there?
It's all of them, actually. It's one of the main things that people like the Bevan Foundation, who are the think tank on poverty, say would make the most difference to children's well-being, because we know that in Wales we've got 1 in 3 children living in poverty, some of the highest rates in the UK, and we know that the damage that does to children as regards their potential in life. A lot of people talking about the first 1,000 days of a child life being absolutely key as regards their future prosperity. So it's absolutely about that, but it's also about the cost of living, because we know times are really difficult for families. We've got to find a way of putting money back in people's pockets, and with those the levels of poverty we have in Wales, this is one way of doing it. But you know, it's not just for those poorest families, because obviously this affects everybody,
isn't it?
And what we've had before is sort of cliff edges of support as regards some more targeted measures. So we want to make sure that every family is able to benefit from this policy, because it will make a difference to everybody's prosperity in Wales, which is obviously something we've got to look at.
So you mentioned child poverty, and that's another priority coming out of our priorities for the next Plaid Cymru Government. So 1 in 3 children in Wales living in poverty. I'm sure I read some statistics that's headed for 34% by 2029 if we do nothing. So can you talk us through the child payment and how that will impact child poverty levels?
Yes, well, again, looking at international evidence, we know that one of the most effective ways of tackling poverty and child poverty is getting money into people's pockets. And in Scotland, the direct child payment has been one of the main ways they've been able to achieve that they were the only place in the UK where those projected levels of child poverty was going to decrease. And as you say, you're quite right, in Wales it looks like it's going set to rise. So none of these things are silver bullets in of themselves, but I think together, you know, what we're going to do, because we don't currently have the powers over welfare, it is something that Plaid Cymru wants, so we can design our own welfare system that, so we can make sure that the needs of the people of Wales are better met, because we don't think that the welfare system is doing that currently. But we, in the meantime, what we can do under the current powers we have is to pilot a child payment, and we've called it Cynnal, which means support, and that will be targeted to 15,000 children in the first place in different areas of Wales. So we'll have, you know, solid evidence then, hopefully, showing the difference that can make.
It's really interesting seeing how all these different policies interlink, because you know, you just think of the free school meals policy as well. 50 million free school dinners served since 2022, and we're looking to extend that as well, aren't we?
Yes, we are. So, you know, we've always wanted that to go further. We were really pleased to be able to bring that in when we had the cooperation agreement with Labour. But we know that, you know, hunger doesn't finish then, and poverty doesn't finish then when you hit 11 years old and go to a comprehensive school. So what we've said we're going to do in the first place is make sure that the poorest families have free school meals. Many do at the moment. A lot of people who are on universal credit,
in
for
secondary
instance,
school,
in secondary school, they currently are eligible. But there are a cohort of a group of families who are poor enough, have low enough incomes to be eligible for universal credit, but are not eligible for free school meal, because there's a threshold. You can't earn more than £7,400.
Right.
And still have free school meals
So
if you're on
they're
universal
just
credit.
slipping through the net at the moment.
They are, and these are people who the state deems to be needing support, right? And they don't have, but they're not eligible for free school meals. So, you know, that's the first step that we want to take to make sure that those children, you know, up to the age of 16, are fed, so they're able to learn in school.
I mean, you can just see how these interconnecting policies together are going to mount up to make a massive difference, definitely to those on the lower incomes. But I think what's really nice to see as well is that childcare policy that will benefit all families across the board. So there's something for everybody in here that's going to make a massive difference, and it just shows, doesn't it, that, you know, in Wales we might not be able to solve the cost of living crisis, but there's certainly a lot more that government can do to help people when they need it. And
exactly.
They need it now more than ever.
Exactly.
Don't
The director of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, which is a big think tank that looks at inequality. The director for England and Wales is called Chris Burt, and he used to work for the Scottish Government. And I remember him giving evidence to a committee that I sat on in the Senedd, saying, yes, we don't have, because what you always get about poverty, all the levers remain in Westminster, we don't have the big levers, and a lot of that is true, and of course Plaid Cymru want to do something about that. But I remember him saying, if you think there's nothing the Welsh Government can do, then you may as well pack up and go home. And what he said to us was childcare, childcare, childcare.
Right.
So we've, you know, this isn't something that's plucked out of the air. This has been internationally proven as a measure that can help not only child poverty, but prosperity generally. Because we've got to remember the main people who are giving care are women. And in Wales, we've got what we call a gender pay gap. Women drop out generally of the labour market, and they up until a certain point they are more or less earning the same as men, and then at a certain point, usually when they're starting to have a family, they fall back and they never really regain that. So, you know, it's a question of a broader equality here as well, to make sure that, you know, women are able to earn what they want to earn, and, as you know, to be able to support their families. So it is a broader measure as regards economic prosperity and well-being for Wales as well.
Yeah, and that policy will directly remove one of the biggest barriers for a large number of people, won't it? So fantastic. Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn, Sioned.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr.